Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for coming to this talk, and thank you very much to Purina for sponsoring it. This talk is all about how I, as a first opinion vet in clinical practice who has just opened my own practice, have set up and care for senior pets in my clinic. So first of all, to introduce myself, my name's Kat. I'm a first opinion vet in clinical practice and have been for over 20 years. I have recently, just last year, opened up my own clinic with my husband. And one of the things that we are both really passionate about, because he's a vet as well, is looking after our older pets. And so we very deliberately put together some very specific plans for our senior patients. And so I'm here to sort of share those with you today, and talk a little bit about our philosophy and approach to senior pets in practice. So let's get going. There is a lot to cover about our pets and how we can look after them in their older years. And this picture is the spider diagram that I made when I was writing this talk, and I've added to it since. And so that every time you think about something, there's something else to think about, because of course seniority affects every body system. It affects our pets in so many different ways, and they all come to the end of their life on a different path because they have had a different life. So one of the things I find really satisfying about caring for senior animals is the individuality of care that they need and that I am able to give them. One thing I am not going to cover in this talk, though, is nutrition, because Purina have got other talks specifically for that. And so if I did talk about nutrition, which is a shame because I love talking about nutrition, but if I did talk about nutrition, this talk would be about 3 times as long. So that is the one thing we're not going to cover, but obviously I haven't forgotten about it. It is a huge part of caring for them when they get older. But when are they old? At what point do we call pets senior? So these are 2 images from the internet. You can find them very easily. The one for the dogs is from the AKC website, and the one from the cats is the iCat Care website. I love both of them, and it really helps to see how we classify our pets and at what point we start to need to change the way that we approach them and their care, because they don't just suddenly become a pensioner overnight. Obviously, it is a gradual process into seniority. The other thing I really like about these is these are great for owners to understand. I think it's really helpful. I will often talk to owners about how old their pet is in human years, because I think it's really helpful for them to understand that their 6-year-old Labrador, who they still see as a puppy, they appreciate there's some changes, but 6 isn't old. Of course it's not. But when I say, well, they are kind of the equivalent of a 50-year-old person, this is the age where health problems can creep in. They're not going to be dreadful, but we can set them up for success for seniority now by making some changes, maybe losing some weight, maybe changing how we exercise them. That comes across so much better than if I equate it to human ages, and I find it goes down really well with clients. The other thing that clients love is these being shared on social media. They always generate a lot of conversation, a lot of comments, and again, it's a really great way of communicating with clients, opening up conversations, getting them to think about the age of their pets, and also centering us, hopefully, as that place who cares about older pets and somewhere for them to come and ask questions. And obviously, it is often talked about that cats and dogs are senior when they are 7. Are they really senior when they are 7? So we consider seniority when they are in the final third of their lifespan. But a lot of the time, and that's, again, another really helpful kind of soundbite and linchpin to hinge our advice off of and justify what we're saying, because I think a lot of the time clients are quite side-eye sometimes about us suggesting changes or tests or diet changes or that kind of thing. But when you're looking at bags of food, and there's lots of products now for older pets, often starts at 7. And I look at a cat and think, well, they're not old at 7. They're probably not even in their final third of their lifespan, hopefully. But there are changes that happen. Biochemical changes and age-related changes do start creeping in at that age. So those are the ages when we need to start thinking about it, but certainly not labouring it on really thick about, oh gosh, they're 7 now, aren't they old? Because that's not going to go down well. But I think as a turning point in conversations when we see these pets, it is really helpful to keep that in mind. But these charts are brilliant. Share them on your social media, share them with your staff. I cannot recommend them enough as a conversation starter. But talking of starting, when should we start? When should we start talking about old age? Or when should we start thinking about old age? Well, we should start right from the start. And actually, we do it without thinking about. We do it without appreciating what we are doing, I think, because of course we see all our youngsters in puppy classes. And we're talking then, aren't we, about dental care and weight gain and behavior and all of those things. Clearly, we're setting them up for a good adulthood and a good life as a pet. But putting those principles in place at that stage obviously sets them up for seniority. Now, we're not going to take a puppy or a kitten and say to clients, well, one day they're going to be old and we're going to, start thinking about end of life. That's not the conversations we're having, but we're doing it without thinking about it. And I think, again, it's just really helpful to remind ourselves sometimes that this is the point of why we do these things. And then it is about that repetition and consistent advice. So it is about talking to clients on a regular basis and saying, don't forget to keep their weight under control. How are you exercising? You're not throwing balls, or you're not using a ball flinger, are you? Or you are looking after their teeth, aren't you? They are on a complete and balanced diet, aren't they? It's those things, those conversations that we talk about make them great pets, keep them healthy, but where it really, really makes a difference is in their senior years. But of course, it's never too late. It's never too late to start those conversations. Obviously, as a clinic, we're a new startup, so we're getting lots of puppies, but we're getting lots of mature dogs, and we're getting lots of senior dogs and cats as well. And so we're having these conversations at every stage of life, but our aim for this practice is to make these conversations part of the journey as we go through life with our pet owners and their pets. And so it doesn't suddenly become, you're 10, you must have a senior clinic. It's a very natural progression. And who can get involved in this conversation? Well, of course, everybody can get involved. This is one place where this is a genuine team effort, and every member of our team can have an input into the health of our senior pets and our pets in general. So it's about the reception staff talking to clients. It's about our student nurses taking some initiative and giving them some jobs to do and some power. And a huge amount of this is our nursing teams, because when it comes to chronic disease management, arthritis, diabetes, renal disease, hypothyroidism, once someone like me as a vet has made a diagnosis, we can pass their more chronic care over to our nursing team, and it can be a real team effort, joined up approach, and a holistic approach. Holistic is a word that I actually don't really like very much, because I think it's been co-opted by the internet to mean alternative. But what holistic means is whole. And this is an opportunity to look at the whole of the pet. So we can talk about their nutrition, we can talk about their weight, we can talk about their joints, we can talk about everything, with the focus on whatever is wrong with that particular animal, because like I said, they all come to seniority with different problems. But of course, all those other aspects come in. And the owner themselves, of course, they're going to need supporting through chronic disease management. They're going to need educating. They're going to need taking along this journey. And that time and those conversations can be had by absolutely everyone in the practice. And they should be had by everyone in the practice. And we should all be singing from the same hymn sheet. So we should all obviously be, talking about age. And I think obviously we're not sort of talking about, oh gosh, they're so old now, oh gosh, there's doddering in. But it is about being consistent and being positive in our messaging, and opening up conversations and planting seeds, because one of the barriers, I think, to successful senior care is the owners themselves, because first of all, they don't want to know sometimes that their pet is getting old. Who wants to face the loss of their pet? Who wants to look in their eyes and think, I've loved you for this long and now I'm going to lose you? Because inevitably, as you start talking about seniority, those questions come up. That's it. They're on their final decline. And a lot of owners don't want to hear it, or, don't want to talk about it. And I think that's quite understandable. So that's why these consistent messaging over the pet's life. So when we suddenly start talking about them needing some dental work, or when we suddenly start talking about arthritis and joint care, it's not such a change of focus. Obviously, these days, Are we just selling something? Is this just another way for these awful vets to make money and charges? And I think that's completely reasonable. People aren't stupid. They know that vet care is costly. They know when we suggest tests, we're going to be talking about costs as well. And so again, I think if we have their trust, if we have if they appreciate that we're part of their support network and their team, those messages are going to be much easier to deliver. And of course, they're worried that we're going to find something that is terminal. That means that their pet is going to die. And I think that is a huge barrier. I think that is why animals come to us too late, when we could have sorted out arthritic joints or hypothyroidism 6 months ago. The tumour that was giving them a bit of diarrhea is now inoperable. And again, the way around that is the relationship building, the consistency of care. And also there is that, well, I don't want to do too much. I don't want to have to deal. I don't want to put them through too much. We've all heard that. I don't want to put them through anything. And I think that, again, completely understandable, totally get it. And a lot of owners will have that. But again, it's about having those conversations and going, oh no, we're not talking about major surgery. We're talking about some blood tests and some tablets, and being clear right from the start when we're testing for things, what we're testing for and what that might look for. They don't need to sit for an hour's lecture on all the different things about senior pets like we're doing right now. But again, I think, being clear in what it is that we're offering to them. And I think not wanting to deal with the problem. I've got 3 children, a job, a couple of jobs really, when you think about the stuff that I do on the side of my clinical work as well. And, giving the dog some Loxicum every day for her arthritis, which I don't at the moment, but one day I probably will. It is just another thing to deal with, isn't it? And in and out for tests and tablets. And I think sometimes we do give clients a lot to do. We get our senior cat with renal disease and we're suddenly saying, right, we need to change her food and test her blood pressure and put her on these tablets and, test her urine and all sorts of different things. And so what we need to do is lead them into this slowly, have those open conversations, try to find out what their personal concerns are about the situation, and hopefully put their minds at rest, but also work with them. That's what that contextualized care is that we all hear so much about these days. It's about figuring out what the owner can manage as well as what the pet can manage, and then coming to a sensible clinical solution. And how do we achieve it? Well, like I've said, it's annual vaccinations that's going to be our touch point with a lot of our pets as they get older. But also, in addition to vaccinations, what the next steps are. So there's this great lady, if you haven't heard of her, you must go and have a look at her work. And she's called Zoe Belshaw. She is a vet in clinical practice, but she also does an enormous amount of research. And a lot of her research focuses on the pet owners themselves and what they're thinking and how they view chronic diseases of all sorts. And she did this amazing paper where she asked owners, what do you want from your vets? Particularly with respect to older pets. And what owners wanted us to talk about was what the next steps were. So we do a vaccination, we've all done it. Oh, it's a 6-year-old Labrador, fabulous. His teeth are a bit tartary, he's probably getting a bit fat, but generally this dog is really healthy and well. We can say a few words, jab him with the vaccinations and use it as a catch-up. But what we never do, and I never did until I read this paper and listened to Zoe talk about this, I never said, in the next year coming up, this is what I would like you to look out for. This is what we might see change. Now, obviously, you've got a 2-year-old cat to a 3-year-old cat, not much is going to change. But you've got a 6-year-old Labrador to a 7-year-old Labrador. Things might start to shift. And that's what owners want to know. They want to know what should they be looking out for next. They're like, great, he's healthy now, that's amazing. But what they don't ask for, but what they really would appreciate, is what they should look for next. And I think that is a real value add that we can give to our clients without even really thinking about it. Obviously, we've got senior health check clinics. They're the sort of jewel in the crown, aren't they, of senior pet care. But what I really want to focus on this talk is that there's so much more than that. Social media and our websites, and showing genuine enthusiasm and interest in our older animals. We all focus on the puppies and kittens, don't we? They're so cute and they're so lovely and everybody likes to see them on social media and the whole team makes a big fuss of them and we give them treats and snacks and we see them loads through that first year. But we can and should focus that enthusiasm on our senior pets as well. And so what's been really interesting in the last year of setting up this clinic is, Dave and I, my husband, we genuinely have this interest in older pets. And so we've put that as a focus on our website. On our bios, it says, for both of us actually, we wrote them independently of each other. We like looking after older pets. We've got information about older pets. We have gained clients to our practice because they have gone on our website, read our bios, because obviously people want to know who we are, seen that we care about older animals, and have brought their older animals to us because they have felt that they haven't been getting the care that they want from other clinics, that those clinics don't care about their pets as much as they do. Of course, that is not the case. But because we have actively discussed passion for older pets, they have come to us because they're all, and they're all ready for those conversations, which is absolutely amazing. And again, it comes down to communication. It comes down to tailoring those individual plans and considering both the pet and the owner. We can do all sorts of wonderful things and feel terribly smug that we've diagnosed chronic condition and made a plan for this older animal to have this wonderful senior years. But the instigator of that plan and the person who's actually delivering the treatment is the owner. So we have to make sure that what we're asking them to do is achievable for them. And if it isn't, figure out a way that it is. So these are our healthy aging clinics in our clinic, and we called them healthy aging. And the reason we called them healthy aging is because I didn't like the word geriatric, the word senior, the word pensioner carries a lot of negative connotations. And I was thinking when I set these up, well, what do I want these to be? What's the focus of a health check for an older pet? It's about getting them to age in a healthy way. So we called them our healthy aging clinics. In actual fact, we called them our annual healthy aging clinics because what I wanted to do was to be, it's all well and good to take the blood now and go, yay, the cat's not hypothyroid, yay, her kidneys are fine, yay, the dog's okay. But actually, that's brilliant. But something will change eventually. So I wanted to get our clients onto a journey of regular checkups. So in our healthy aging clinics is a free 6-month health check. And the idea is at that free 6-month health check, they are encouraged to book the next healthy aging clinic in 6 months' time. Now, I have a confession to make about this healthy aging clinic. We've done hardly any of them. And I was really surprised about that when we started because I like senior pet care. We thought we'd talk about it a lot. But I think the problem with clinics like this is you really want a healthy pet to attend, so a cat that's maybe just a bit old, but not showing any clear signs of anything. The vet isn't thinking, I think you're hypothyroid, we should go down that journey, or I think your kidneys are a bit shocked, we should go down that journey. It's just like, you're old, but you seem well. Let's just make sure that you are as healthy on the inside as you are on the outside. And I think particularly because we're a new startup, our client numbers aren't massive, and a lot of the time this is a numbers game, isn't it? But B, a lot of the time the pets are coming to us with a suspicion of a clinical disease, and then a healthy aging clinic really isn't appropriate for them because this is a massively discounted cost. And in actual fact, for this talk, I went back and had a look, and we're pretty much breaking even on this. There's not a lot spare in the tank. So as a now practice owner, I can't give this away to every cat that I see that I think is ill, because that's not how we're going to be able to run a successful and profitable practice. So we haven't done very many. I wrote it, I was so proud of it, I was all smug about it. We haven't done very many, but it is there, and our nursing team know about it, and everybody knows about it, and it is something that we discuss with clients. But a lot of our pets we're picking up kind of later on in their journey, but having them as that sort of jewel in the crown, that focus point around which you can build senior care is I think really important. But it is about so much more. It's about so much more than a clinic, And if I can get one message across in this talk, that is basically it. So how do we, in our practice, deliver successful and passionate and enthusiastic senior pet care? So first of all, we have our healthy aging clinics, the jewel in the crown that is very rarely used, but, is there and is appropriate and is used sometimes. We use our website and our social media. Like I said, we have a focus on older pets, and it has gone down incredibly well. We share pictures on our social media of our older pets. We take pictures of the puppies and kittens all the time. Take pictures of those lovely grey muzzles, of those lovely cloudy eyes, and share that story of passion and devotion for older pets, because it is there. The puppy, the dog in the top corner is a gorgeous old 16-year-old dog called Maggie, who went out for a walk one day and managed to break her toe. Who knows why? Anyway, she came in, she had blood, she had an anaesthetic, we x-rayed her foot, we bandaged it up, she healed beautifully. So she was, not only was she a lovely case to share and story, and that positive, we anaesthetised a 16-year-old dog and she's really well. It went down really well with social media, and it was just such a lovely story to share. We look after the senior patients in our clinic, and we provide for them. So the next picture down is a dog that belongs to one of our nurses, and we have these pads in our clinic. So when they're in every consult room, they're in the waiting room as well. So when we've got an old pet who's, inevitably our floors are hard. Of course they are. They need to be wiped clean. We give them those to sit on, and they were a complete accident. But if you listen to Hannah Capon and her amazing arthritis talks, if you're into arthritis or older pets, I'm sure you have heard about Cam. One of the things that she advocates for is having yoga mats in the practice to put down on the floor to store and put down on the floor for senior pets. And that is another option. These are brilliant and entirely by accident. When we first opened the practice, we have benches in our waiting room, and the pads for the benches that clients sit on were not ready. So our builder went out and bought about 30 of these from Dunelm Mill, and they are super cheap, super thin, waterproof outdoor pads for outdoor sofas. So they're like the cheapest thing you can buy. I actually have no idea how much he spent on them, but were not expensive. And so we now have loads of these things in the practice, and they have come in so handy, and clients love it. Rest your old bones on this, my love, while I'll get on the floor. It helps my knees as well. And it's just that little tiny bit of extra care that takes no time at all to whip it out from behind the chairs in the consult rooms, stick it on the floor. Love it. Everybody loves it. We obviously have talked about our nursing teams. We fully engage them in pet care. We give them autonomy. We let them use their full skill range. When I have diagnosed a cat with kidney disease or diabetes or a dog with arthritis, we have specific clinics. So again, on our website, we've set up these specific nursing clinics with very defined sort of protocols and outcomes for them. And I pass them off to my nursing team. And it's more economical for the client than coming to see me. They get longer time with our nursing team, and they get that true all-round educating care. We collaborate really closely with paraprofessionals. I love having extra members on my team, and so I refer loads of patients to our local physiotherapist. She's brilliant. She sends me clients. I send her clients. We refer lots to our local trainer. There's a really good local dog trainer who does who has senior training classes. So we're able to work together, and that linkage between physios and massage therapists and hydrotherapists and behaviorists and trainers is so important for every aspect, I think, of veterinary care. And we should consider ourselves part of that team of professionals that care for these animals. And we share things like we let clients look behind the scenes, because obviously one of the things we're doing a lot with our older patients is anaesthetising them, particularly for dental work. And we're really proud of our dental setup. We are really proud of our anaesthesia care. So we actively talked about it. So we break down the barriers of concern. I love a score chart. They are so brilliant, and there are so many, and they cover so many different things, and particularly for senior care. So there's ones for arthritis, there's ones for dementia, there's ones for mobility. There's so many, and we use them all the time. They're great for the clients filling them in their own time. So, and adding up the numbers so we can talk to them when they come into the clinic, or when we can give them after the consultation, say fill it in and send it back so I can see. They're wonderful for planting seeds. Do you think he's a bit stiff? No, he's absolutely fine. I don't think there's a problem. Okay, well, I would be a bit worried, but let's fill in this scoring chart and see. And sometimes they can fill in scoring charts. It's possible for them, particularly the mobility ones, for them to think that everything's fine. But again, it's about, in a very non-confrontational way, a very collaborative way of saying, let's see if there's a problem. Let's look at this in more detail. And so planting those seeds and opening those conversations that can be used by all the team members. You do not need specialist knowledge to hand over these forms, hand them back and do the scoring, and even deliver the score. Oh, it's come out as a moderate for arthritis. Let me pass that to the vet. And we can, you can have a chat on the desk about it. You can do them with the paraprofessionals, so the physio can do one and send it back. So we can track the changes. We can track changes, so we have an objective measurement of success or decline. And that is really, 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 really helpful. They're easy to print out. We do WhatsApp with our clients on the digital practice website, so we can send them out on there. They just are fantastic. And like I say, the options are absolutely endless. There's a load, coast. Don't forget about the simple ones: body condition score and particularly muscle condition scores. So important in our older pets, particularly our older cats, to keep an eye on that number. And when we start to see it drop, that's going to open a conversation about mobility and nutrition and all sorts of things. There's loads of them for dementia. Really, really easy to miss. Those little brains just slowly slowing down. And so there's the KDs, which is the Canine Dementia Scale, the Vishtal, which is the cat cognition one. That one I could only find in a paper, in an article. I couldn't find an actual one to download. So feel free to sort of nick that and ask the questions, but they are brilliant. And of course, there's the quality of life for end of life, because that is something that we have to remember is part of these conversations. As soon as we start talking about aging, the clients start thinking about oldness and losing their pets. And so I use the quality of life a lot, and they are really important part of that conversation. This frailty is something new, and is something that I think is coming in the pet world, because of course all those scoring charts are wonderful, huge fan, brilliant, love them, but there's one for every different thing. And you can be asking to owners to pick up on a lot of different things. Wouldn't it be great if we had one for everything? And that's frailty. And this is how now geriatric care is done in the human world, is they assess humans for frailty, and how capable you are in your older years is a massively accurate predictor of how capable you're going to be as you continue to age, and how frail and mobile you are going to be. And so I think that this is coming in VetMed. I found a couple of papers when researching this that are putting together some frailty scales and some frailty indexes, but there's a lot of kind of checks and balances and testing that they're going to have to go through first to clinically validate them as tools before they're going to be useful. But I think it is really worth thinking about, because it encompasses all those aspects of health and life. We can predict what journey this pet might be on, but most importantly, we can change it. If we see those problems early, we can change it and change their trajectory, which is exactly what we want. So now on to some of my favourite things. So I'm just going to spend the last bit of the talk talking about some of my favourite aspects of senior pet care, how I approach them as a clinician, how we approach them as a team in our practice, and some of the things I think are really just worth focusing on more specifically. The first is feline arthritis. We talk all about canine arthritis. There's the wonderful CAM website, the fabulous Hannah Capon, like I've discussed. And if you are at all interested in that, you will have heard of her. So I'm not going to cover that ground. It has been done, and there's some amazing information out there. But feline arthritis is a bit neglected. 90% of cats have it over the age of 12 in radiographic changes. Now, we know radiographic changes aren't always closely clinically correlated with physical changes, but it's massive, and it's missed. It's missed by owners. It's missed by us, I think, a lot of the time, and we don't want to open up those conversations. It can be really hard, can't it, to sort of, have a cat for a vaccination and start talking about mobility and things. And like I said, there's all those barriers of owners not wanting to hear about it. So how can we talk about it? Well, obviously we can use our physical exams, those mobility charts, and talking to owners about what they can look for. So I talk a lot about the line, and it's visible in both of these pictures here. That line in the thigh, that is a massive indicator of muscle loss in hind legs, and the underlying cause of that is almost certainly going to be arthritic change. And so being able to point out some physical differences on their pets, for them to go, oh yeah, and for then you to go, I think this is what the problem is I think really helpful. And don't be afraid to use pain relief. Even in cats with other chronic diseases, use non-steroidals. There is a paper about non-steroidal use from, I think it's the ACVIM, the American College of Internal Veterinary Medicine, and also Sarah Caney, the great, wonderful feline clinician that is Sarah Caney, has done some work. And there's work to show that even with our renal patients, non-steroidals are not only safe, but actually they make them better. They improve renal values, because one of the reasons that renal values go up is because these cats are chronically dehydrated and undernourished. And what's the reason for that? It's because they don't get up on those sore joints to go and have a drink of water, or to go and eat the renal food, or to go and eat the food that we want them to. So if we make them better, if we make them feel better, they're more mobile, they eat more, they drink more, it makes them better. And also, chronic pain is miserable. Other chronic diseases, also miserable, but pain is the worst. And so we should never be afraid to take pain away, because pain is a quality of life issue. Pain is a problem and it should be dealt with. But it's not just about pain meds. There's loads more we can do for our older cats. And this is something I genuinely could do a whole talk on, and have done in the past. There is a talk on the Webinar Vet that I have done about senior cats and their care, and how the changes that owners can make at home. And this is a conversation, I think, which I love having, because it doesn't cost any money, or very little. And most of the things that they're going to buy, they don't buy from me. So this is a conversation that we can have that value add, that we're not, we can prove to owners that we're not just all about the money. And it's things, and it empowers them to help their pets at home. And so it's things like steps up to the sofa, up to their favourite resting place. Put a poof in front of the sofa, so they can go from the poof to the sofa, from the sofa to the arm, from the arm to the back to the windowsill. Just point out those journeys their cats are having and how they can help them. Ramps, again, similar principle. Put mats where they land. I had this wonderful old cat in my previous practice who had the worst elbows I have ever seen in my life. They were like a bag of rocks. Poor thing. And she was lovely, and her owner loved her. And her owner brought me, and we talked about all of this, and her owner brought me a video one day of the cat doing those things, up onto the little step, up onto the sofa, on the all the way up. She loves sitting and looking out the window. And then she showed me the video of it coming down, and it did all those little steps and then landed on the laminate, splat. And it was her elbows that were the problem. And I was like, I think a mat there would be really helpful, just so she's got some grip. And the owner hadn't thought about it. She showed me the video. I put it in. It cost next to nothing. And that cat's elbows were protected, because, of course, it's that repetitive strain injury that's so damaging to arthritic joints. Heated beds, heating up joints is so wonderful. We've all had a bad back. I'm getting to that age now. And a nice Wheatie tucked in makes such a difference. Don't forget the litter trays. I could talk for hours about litter trays. Litter trays need to be age appropriate, and for our senior pets, they need to have a low sides so they can climb in without having to make big strides. They need a soft litter. No pellets. Walking on pellets is a little bit like walking on gravel for us with our bare feet, but particularly if they're arthritic, not only have they got to settle themselves down on an uncomfortable surface and squat and go to the toilet, so put their weight through those arthritic joints, they are arthritic in their toes. Toe arthritis is so common and so underdiagnosed. And so they're standing on painful little feet on really rough, hard, spiky surface, and then pushing their weight through their feet to go to the toilet. And loss of litter tray habits is a really common problem in older pets, and it is a huge relationship drain for the owner and the pet, and a cause of great frustration. And often, we've all heard it, she's pooing next to the tray, not in the tray. I don't know why. She's punishing me. No, she'd quite like to go to the toilet where she wants to go to the toilet, where you'd like her to go to the toilet, but she can't, or she doesn't want to. So just something as simple as a really soft sand-like litter. And the other thing that's really helpful with that is it's light to move, because they still want to do those normal behaviours. They still want to bury their poo. They still want to bury their wee. But again, pellets or, heavy gravel, big chunks of litter, it's hard to move with sore joints. But light, sand-like, flowing litter makes such a difference. Raised food bowls, again, I think we're very good at those with dogs, aren't we? To raise them up, but same for cats. We need them high so they're not leaning all the way down on sore necks and sore elbows and sore shoulders. Moving water, we want our older cats to drink. They're very vulnerable to dehydration. And a lot of cats really like moving water. It is a bit Marmitey. There is a paper, Andy Sparks did a paper. Some cats love it, some cats hate it. But if you've got a cat that loves it, then the moving water really encourages them to drink. And we want our older cats to remain as well hydrated as possible. And don't forget, they need easily accessible and multiple resources. So if they rest in the bedroom, it's not very pleasant, but could they have a litter tray or some food in the bedroom? Could it be downstairs as well? We need to make life easy for our older cats, particularly when they get to those really super senior years, and providing everything close by, not too close, obviously, litter trays don't go next to food bowls, but within the region of each other will make their existence so much easier, make them eat more, make them drink more, give them better health and a better quality of life. So now let's talk about supplements, which I think the vast majority of our older patients are going to be on to some extent. And I think most clients are giving something if we ask them. I don't know about you guys, but my social media feed is full of supplements making some really dreadful promises. Lots of scaremongering going on out there. The advertising is really dreadful, but it is a very, very effective. And I think that when clients are on supplements, what they're doing is they're recognizing that their pet is aging, which is a good thing. They're recognizing that their pet needs some support, which is an excellent thing. But what they are not educated to do, which we are educated to do, is to be able to pick a supplement which is actually going to be worth their while in spending money on it and also making the effort to get it into their pet. So they probably won't tell us, because a lot of the adverts are very sort of anti-vet in that space, I find, but also I think a lot of them don't think to tell us, it's part of the care that they're in charge of, not the care that we're in charge of. So I think we have to actively ask, are you giving any supplements? Are they on a thing extra? And of course, the supplement market is really almost completely unregulated in the UK. There's very little sort of legislation around it, which is why they can get away with making big claims. And unless there is any sort of third-party testing happening on the supplement, then there's no real guarantee that the supplement contains what it says it contains. So we have to be very careful about that. And some supplements aren't benign. You give enough turmeric, you will cause problems. There are side effects. I think supplements are seen as natural and therefore they are safe, but that is not always the case, as we know. And I think if we are going to be advising supplements is part of the conversation for older pets, and they definitely can help. Omega-3 supplements for joints, MCT oil supplements for brain health, heart and liver and lungs. There's loads of supplements that we can give our patients, and some of them are a legitimate treatment choice. But what we should be doing, and I believe this extremely firmly, is we should be, as a profession, advising that our clients take science-based supplements from reputable companies that we know and trust and that we can be sure are doing the research, are testing their products, and are genuinely doing, there's genuinely is what's in their supplement is what they say. And I think we should be encouraging clients away from the ones that advertise on Facebook, quite frankly. But then I think the other thing is we have to ask ourselves, do they need a supplement at all? When it comes to supplements, the clue is in the name. They are supplementary. And so we need to be sure that they are worth the client's expense, because some of these are not cheap. Some clients are genuinely spending a lot of money on these things, and a lot of variety of them. Some of them, they're like I say, they're having to make real effort to get them into their pets, and if every supplement the arthritic pet is on goes in with a piece of cheese, that's not going to help their weight. And do they need a supplement at all? Are they actually appropriate for what the problem is? Is there the evidence behind them? Collagen supplements, hyaluronic acid supplements. There's lots and lots of ones out there now with almost no evidence behind them. And can we be savvy with our supplements? Can we include it in the diets? Plenty of the senior diets now have the omega-3s that they need for good joint health. Some are supplemented with the MCT oils, the medium chain triglycerides, which are so great for brain health. We can say to the client, literally, you don't need to give all these pills. You can just give this food. And I think that is fantastic and will probably save them money. The one thing that is on there, though, when I talk about regulation, there is some regulation. Well, there's not regulation, but there is a stamp of third-party authority over some of the dental ones. And again, dental health is something which is in decline in our older pets. And so I would always say that any dental treatment that we are advising should have the VOHC seal of approval, which is the Veterinary Oral Health Council. I'm sure most of you have heard of it, but if you haven't, definitely go and look it up. They've got a list of their approved products on there, many of which are made by really reputable companies. So, but apart from that, in the UK, we really don't have anything else. So we have to use our own educated judgment on what is and what isn't a good idea. And talking of ideas and brains, cognition is something which I think is really underappreciated, or dementia is something that's really underappreciated in our senior cats and on our senior pets. And again, unless we're having the conversations with our clients, they're probably not going to be telling us that, they're noticing a bit of vacancy, or he walks into a room and then forgets. We're not going to get to know about the cognition problems until they're really extreme, until the cat is up and yowling in the night, or the dog is losing its toilet training, or is really clearly forgetful about something. But senility can have a massively negative impact on both the animal's quality of life, but also the human's quality of life and that human-animal bond that they have. Because when the animal starts to become forgetful or vacant or less interactive or more withdrawn, it really hurts the owner's feelings, and it damages that relationship. So we need to be having, I always think, quite proactive conversations about brain health, because we can make a difference, but we just need to know about it. And it is fantastically more common than we recognise. I am sure of it. So that's where sort of the Disher scoring, the KD scoring, the Vishtal scoring that I discussed earlier in the talk come in. But it is a diagnosis of exclusion and comorbidity. So other things will impact on brain health and anxiety, and behaviour. Pain is a huge one, hugely impacts on levels of depression, levels of anxiety, levels of interaction with the client. Obviously, hypertension in our senior cats has a massive negative impact on brain function. So we've got to... it's hard to diagnose sometimes dementia unless it's really extreme. We've got to rule out other things, but we should be having really active conversation about brain aging and them, because I think when you talk to clients about it, they will often say, oh no, I have noticed that, or yes, I wonder about that. And then we can get them onto diet supplemented with MCTs, or we can get them onto supplements of MCTs, which is where it's at the moment. And there are medications if that's appropriate, and lifestyle changes, again, like the cats with all their changes around the house. Can we make their lives easier so they're not feeling anxious and worried or confused about things, like a nightlight, for example, for if they wake up in the night. And talking of waking up in the night, the next thing I really wanted to discuss was sleep, because good quality sleep is absolutely vital. And the impact of poor sleep, I'm sorry, that's gone off the screen there. The impact of poor sleep can be really significant. And it's, if you're more tired, you're less able to cope. If you're waking up in the night because you're painful, you're not going to be able to cope with that pain. You might be waking your family up, and that's disturbing their sleep. And I think one thing, it's hard looking after an older pet, and making sure that everybody sleeps through the night is really important. So persuading our clients that they might not be sleeping properly can sometimes be challenging. My dog sleeps in the kitchen downstairs. I have no idea what she's doing in the night. She's 18 months old. I presume she's sleeping through. But unless she was really distressed, panting or whining or pacing or whining or making a noise, I wouldn't know that she wasn't sleeping. And so this is one of the areas where I will often advise my clients. And in fact, I advise them a lot to fit an activity tracker to an older pet. And they look at me like I'm completely insane, because they're like, he never leaves my side and he definitely walks a lot less because he's arthritic. Why on earth would I want an activity tracker? But actually, they're brilliant, particularly for sleep, because they can see if they're up and pacing in the night, or if they're shifting about, or if they're panting in their basket. They are really brilliant. And they can also help with tracking disease like arthritis and the improvement in the step count and things like that. So I think activity trackers, in my clinic, we hand them out for the puppies. And we did 1 month where they did a special offer and we could hand them out to the seniors. And I really want them to expand on that, because I think they're just such a useful tool. Obviously, a deep supportive bed, some of those lovely orthopedic beds, those lovely co-forming beds, and again, I think that's quite an easy conversation to have, because if you say to the client, if his back's sore, he's going to really enjoy a nice comfy bed, they're going to be like, oh yeah, me too. And heat sources, snuggle safes. I send loads of people to the internet to buy snuggle safes. I'm like, we've got these in the practice. They're amazing, but these are brilliant for keeping them warm at night because, they don't want to be woken up by a draft or, their back's getting cold or their hips are cold and therefore sore. So heat sources can be great. Obviously, something safe that lasts all night like that is absolutely fantastic. And night lights. A lot of nighttime waking and then pacing or crying or yowling is because they're confused. Seniority is going to come to us all, and we're not going to get there with just one problem. And lots of those problems feed into each other. But little simple fixes can make such a difference. And so when your cat gets up in the night and is a bit weirded out that it's dark and I can't see very well and where is everybody and it's so quiet, but if there's a little night light there just illuminating the way, or dogs with nuclear sclerosis and they can't see very well, if there's a little night light just bathing them with light so they can wake up and think, oh no, it's okay, I do know where I am and I do know what's going on and I can now go back to sleep because I don't need to get up and be really distressed. They're fantastic simple little changes that I don't think anyone would think of unless we actively have those conversations. And that's why it's so important that we are leading the discussion on this with our clients. And then I think the other thing that we absolutely have to acknowledge out loud and say to their faces is it is hard to do this. It is hard to care for an elderly animal. And you can feel resentment towards them because they're waking you up in the night, because you want to go out for a really long walk and enjoy it. And you're trailing around the park with a lead, going super slowly. They're costing you lots of money in medications. You're having to give them medicines and it's an extra thing to do. The time taken to go to physio appointments or behavioural appointments or veterinary appointments, it's massive. And those late nights and the dirty floors and the accidents, and also that constant worry about, when is the end? Am I feeling guilt? And then they feel guilty about thinking about that and about thinking about the end and when it should come and whether they're looking forward to it. The guilt and the shame is really common because I think intrusive, resentful thoughts will come into a lot of owners' minds. And what we need to do is just acknowledge the challenge and let them know it's normal to feel overwhelmed or overburdened. And something else that I think, so they don't feel bad and they feel able to talk to us about it and to be able to have, so they know that they will not be judged. That's the most important thing. And then I think the other really important thing, or that I don't think I think about enough, actually, and I try really hard to do this for clients, is to give a hierarchy of treatments and care. Because let's say the Cavalier King Charles Spaniel with their heart disease, and they are often owned, aren't they, by elderly people as well, who are probably taking loads of their own meds. And we feel really smug because we've diagnosed stage B2 heart disease and we've got them on vetmedin and we've got them on frusemide and then maybe we've got them on Forticor as well, and then maybe we think, oh, let's put them on spironolactone and let's get them in for these tests. And so we're giving these owners 4 different medications. Maybe we think a supplement is a good idea as well. Maybe they're also arthritic. And so they've got this really long list of meds to try to get into a tiny fussy cavy that we've told them we don't want to gain weight. But the scenarios are similar with lots. And they have no idea which one is more important than the other. They have no idea which one they can skip, or which one, if the dog spits out, they don't have to fight again. Or, if the dog only has, wants 2 pieces of cheese today. So I try really hard to write a list, and I'm like, look, all these meds are important. I'm not giving you them for fun. But if you're having a hard day, or they're really, being pernickety and don't want to play today with getting the meds down them, this is the hierarchy of importance of these medications. These are, try to get the vetmedin in every day, and maybe the frusemide. But if we miss a few Forticors or a few spironolactones, it's not the end of the world. Owners don't have this level of depth of knowledge that we do. And, obviously we know that, but I think sometimes really stopping to think about things from their perspective is so important. And another area where that is really important is talking about end of life, because people aren't stupid. As soon as their pets get old, they know the end is coming. They know it's not far away, but they don't know how far away it is. And they worry about the end all the time. And another amazing paper that Zoe Belshaw did was about end of life conversations. I think it was about arthritis. And an enormous number of clients, when we diagnose their pets with arthritis, one of their first thoughts is, when is it going to be the end? When are they going to die? When am I going to have to make that decision to put them to sleep? And of course, we're not talking about that. When we've got a 10-year-old stiff Labrador, typical dog, get it on some Loxicom, gets loads better, brilliant, you've got arthritis, lifelong condition, take the meds, okay, thank you, bye, see you for a catch-up whenever. We never talk about, well, I mean, maybe you guys do, but I certainly didn't until I read this paper of Zoe's, which is why I love her so much, because she really has improved my my consultation and my veterinary skills, I think. I never used to talk about the end or even the progression. I'd be like, we'll get this limping sorted and we'll check you once every 3 months. And when you come in every 3 months, I'll ask you about their mobility. But what I really never did was like, these are the next signs you might notice. We might need to add in more meds at some point, But I would never talk about end of life because it's years away. But now I make a point, I don't labour the point, but I make a point of just saying, he will have this for years, or it is likely to progress, and we may lose him because of it, he may die with it, he may die because of it. But really make a point about the time frame. The other really good one, of course, and that's why the little cat is here in the picture, is chronic renal failure in cats. Again, that's one of those where we feel really smug and we're like, oh, we know what level of protein there is in your urine. We know what your blood pressure is. We're giving you all these meds and this new food, and woo, brilliant. We've done a great job of irising down your renal failure. But we haven't told you how long your cat's going to live or what the likely time frame of this problem is. And especially in terms of like expense and things, that's the other thing they're going to be thinking about is, wow, this is, bumped up my monthly costs. How long am I going to have to do this for? So I make a point of discussing, and with every chronic disease, Cushing's disease, arthritis, Addison's, even if I'm diagnosing them really young, I do make a point now of talking about the progression of the disease. And if it is appropriate, I'm not talking about death at every appointment, but if it's appropriate, just throwing in there a little like, this, he will get to a normal lifespan, or maybe this is life limiting. And what changes we should notice along the way and what kind of journey we're likely to be on, particularly for things like arthritis. I think that is a really important conversation, and certainly using those CAM resources. We don't necessarily have to have it in too much depth. We can pass them on to there and they'll get all the support and everything that they need. And I think recognizing anticipatory grief is another really common feeling. I mean, I don't know about you, I get it. I get it already. My dog's 18 months old, less. She runs about the fields. I watch her having the most wonderful time. And I think, oh my goodness, one day you won't be able to do this. One day you won't even be here. And then I think, well, that is ridiculous. I've got years left, hopefully. But again, another really normal thought process that owners will go through, but they will not say it out loud because they think this makes me sound like a monster. So to be able to our job is to say the hard things out loud, and their job is to, they may not even say thank you, but they'll have heard us, and that's what's important. And the other thing that's important is acknowledging end of life and talking about it and talking about that process. And it was only when I started to write this talk and really think about this and sit down to talk about it that I think I finally figured out why we get so many presents for ending animals' lives. We don't get presents for saving them, but we get presents for ending them. And I think it is because, this is my personal theory, I think a lot of owners are really worried. Of course they are, about that, what happens, that process. Death is no longer a community event, is it? People die in hospitals and they die in hospices. They very rarely die at home surrounded by their families, even though that would be wonderful. So death is something that isn't commonly experienced. And a active death, actively choosing to send your animal to heaven, is a humongous thing for an owner to have to do. And I think we all know that, but I think, again, it's worth acknowledging. But they don't know how it's going to go. They're worried about it. And so when it goes really smoothly and really well and really peacefully, because euthanasias are something that, as a profession, we are absolutely excellent at, when it goes well, I think we get those gifts because of the relief. I think that's why, and the kindness we show and the care we've given. But we put so much more effort into saving a splenectomy or a GDV or a PIO or a C-section, or there's really dramatic moments, and you might get a card if you're lucky, But we do euthanasias, and it's much more consistent, and I am sure that is why. And the reason this post is here, so this is a post that we did on our Facebook page, because we have this lovely quiet room. We've put the lights in the ceiling, and we turn on heaven. And I say to people, if I go in there for some other reason, I say heaven isn't turned on, so you're not going today. But it's a lovely space, and I was really pleased we were able to put it in, and we're really proud of it. And this is a Facebook post I put up. I agonized for a long time over putting this up because I didn't know how it would go down, because it is an emotive, difficult subject to talk about. And the positive feedback we got on this post is probably one of our most popular Facebook posts ever. Because we were open about it, and people were on there sharing their stories about end of life, saying how nice it was. We've got a whole page on our website about the euthanasia process, what happens, what to expect, how to deal with grief, how to talk to children about grief. You can go on our website, the name of the practice is there, and have a read of it. And I was really surprised how positively that was received. And I think that we need to talk more about being open about it, because we are quite secretive. We don't want to upset people, but actually talking about it and being open about it demystifies the process, and it really puts people's minds at rest, so they know what to expect when it's coming. Because we all know, if we are lucky, we will have our pets get to a grand old age, but then we will have to say goodbye. And to be able to know a little bit about that before it happens, I think is just so helpful. But again, it was something that I just hadn't appreciated because I hadn't put myself in my client's shoes. So my final thoughts: senior pet care is not just a clinic, it's a philosophy, it's a belief, it's a lifestyle. And I think that we need to build our clinics, really integrate it into every step of the way in our practices. Our patients are living longer, they are getting older, they're having longer senior lives. In fact, I saw one of my very favorite patients very recently, and I've been looking after him for probably about 10 years. They've followed me to this new practice, which is wonderful. And he's not so keen on me, but I love him. And his owner said to me, and he's a 16-year-old Cocker Spaniel, and he looks great, one of these that you think, oh, you're going to go forever. But his owner said to me, he has been old for the longest period of his life. He has been senior and older and requiring extra care, and not being, a dog she can walk up mountains with, for longer than he has been any other kind of dog through his life. And she looks after him brilliantly. But again, I thought that was really perceptive. People live with old pets for a long time. They need our help and support that entire process. And we should be really focused on that as veterinary clinicians, because that is where we're going to make the biggest impact on our pets' lives, is at that senior time of life. But we need to have a tailored approach to each individual. That's what's so satisfying, I personally find, about looking after older patients, is every single one of them is different. They've come to seniority and are on a different path. They're on a different journey, and their owners are different, and what they want and what they can achieve, what they can afford, what works for them and what works for that animal is different. So creating that relationship, having that trust and that bond between the client and the pet and us, and working together as a team to give them the best older years, is just so satisfying. And we can use every member of our team. Our nursing teams, this is something where we can really get their autonomy going and use that skill set, which is so fantastic. But we can also use our receptionists, we can use our ANAs, we can use every member of our team to positively and impactfully contribute to the care of these patients. We need to say the hard stuff out loud, so our owners don't have to. For them to be able to say, I'm starting to not like the dog that I've lived with for 16 years, is awful. To have to say that out loud, and the worry that they will be judged and, maligned for that, we have to say it. It is hard. This is difficult. We know it's difficult. Are you struggling? How can we help you? And we need to love the seniors as much as we do the puppies and kittens. The grey faces, the cloudy eyes, the pinched, those little old lady cat faces. They need to feature. They need to feature on our Facebooks, on our socials. They need to feature on our websites. We need to celebrate them just as much as we do the babies, because they are just as cute and they are just as lovely. And actually, in many ways, they're far more interesting. So Thank you ever so much for listening. I hope you have enjoyed it. If you have any thoughts or questions, feel free to reach out to me on my social channels. You can find me wherever you look, pretty much. And don't forget, if you've got any questions about senior pet nutrition, or to some extent senior pet care in general, do reach out to your local Purina reps. They are a mine of information. Don't forget about the Purina Institute, which is the research arm of Purina, and their website, and also Center Square, which is their kind of like bite-sized bits of the website where they've taken all their research and all their diet stuff. But it's more than that. It encompasses a lot more than nutrition on that page, and there's some really brilliant resources both for us and for owners that are really super shareable. So thank you so much. Do let me know any thoughts or questions, and I hope you have a great day. Bye bye.